Dark Souls is a franchise that tells a lot of its story and lore through subtleties, hints, and small details. If you want to really understand what's going on in these games, you're going to have to look for it, and you're going to have to look pretty deep. Now, there are definitely some limitations to this kind of storytelling, but if it's done right, which it often is in this series, it can give us a rewarding, complex narrative that's deeper than just surface level. Right now, we're going to be looking at just one example of this in the new DLC, The Ring City, for Dark Souls 3. This one instance implicitly tells us about 3 developed and interconnected stories, all with just the ingenious placement of one single item. Let's go see how Dark Souls 3 tells a story. The item we're going to be looking at is being held by a statue of Gwyn, King of the Gods. At first, this piece of scenery just tells the story of Gwyn and the Pygmies. The smaller figure cowering next to Gwyn is a Pygmy, a member of a race of beings that inherited a power similar in strength to Gwyn's own. Gwyn is recognizing the strength of the Pygmies by handing them a crown similar to his own. Now, while this is very lore significant on its own, the art of From Software's storytelling really shines when we take a look at what's in Gwyn's other hand, the brightly glowing white item. When we first see the bright glow, we assume it must be something pretty amazing, something that can rival the crown of the pygmy that takes up Gwyn's other hand. So we find the secret door in the elevator, make our way to the statue, drop down, and the item is a Chloranthy plus 3 ring. It raises stamina recovery speed. Come again? The Lord of the Gods, while recognizing and crowning one of the most powerful beings in the universe, is holding a stamina recovery ring? And this ring of green bar regeneration is the item I claim secretly tells a whole host of stories. I know at first that the realization that the grand item Gwyn is holding is a Chloranthy ring can be a bit of a letdown, but after some further investigation we can start to see the intricacies behind the scenes. The 3 interconnected avenues of story that we're about to head down are as follows. The Ring City, which is Gwyn's gift, Filianore, which is Gwyn's daughter, and lastly, Gwyn himself. The first connection here is the most obvious, so obvious that I missed it my first time through. This ring, at its most basic level, represents Gwyn handing the Ring City, the area we're playing in, to the Pygmies. The small envoy banner states, "For the Pygmies who took the Dark Soul, the Great Lord, Gwyn, gifted the Ring City, an isolated place at World's End. This city at the end of the world was made as a place for the Pygmies." A further note that'll come up more later is that it does seem for a variety of reasons that this wasn't the most benevolent gift, and it was more of a place to keep the Pygmies contained. But I still haven't revealed how any of this is related by the Chloranthy ring in Gwyn's hand. The crux of this connection can be found throughout the Ring City. It's green. The Ring City is by far one of the greenest and most alive areas in the whole game. Parts of it are teeming with grass and plant life, and even some enemies are infused with roots. Obviously this connects to the growth-focused recovery of the Chloranthy ring. And still more, Gwyn is handing the Pygmies a ring. The name of the city that he gave them is the Ringed City. Of course the ring represents the city of a similar name. So we've shown our first connection. And while it does start to show the kind of implicit storytelling that really amazes me, it's still a bit surface level. Let's move on and see how far down the rabbit hole goes. The bulk of hidden metaphors and symbolism in this case comes with Filianore. Some more context given by the small envoy banner is that it also states that Gwyn gave the Pygmies his beloved youngest daughter, promising her that he would come for her when the day came. This daughter is Filianore, and we spend a good chunk of the DLC fighting our way to her. Filianore is very heavily associated with young greenery, and there is no coincidence that she is in the Green Ringed City. The lead up to her church is the greenest, most lush area in the entire game, including the city. Grass and flowers abound, making the walk towards the church a beautiful sight, even with the dual-wielding ringed knight. We do see these flowers elsewhere in the game, at the Kiln of the First Flame. However, the ones near Filianore are so much more filled with life compared to the dead ashen ones of the kiln. We are further shown that the greenery surrounding Filianore is not just coincidence. The first reward for Filianore's covenant is the young grass dew, which is a small transparent stone that once graced the young grass crest. This reveals that the power of regrowth and stamina recovery we find in the Grass Crest Shield, and furthermore the oh-so-important Chloranthy rings, seems to be rooted in Filianore. This connection is furthered by looking directly at Filianore and some of the unique enemies we referenced earlier that reside throughout the Ringed City. Taking a closer look at Filianore, we see what looks almost like roots around her eyes. Roots obviously relating to growth and plant life. This intertwines with the overgrown Lothric Knights and the overgrown skeletons we find. Both enemies are covered and filled with old dark roots, almost like a more realized version of the roots in Filianore's eyes. These enemies act almost exactly like their non-overgrown counterparts, so the roots covering them aren't hindering. Nothing of the plant connections to Filianore are malignant ones. This continues through to the Grass Crest Shield and the Chloranthy ring. Neither have anything to do with facilitating violence against enemies or anything harmful. They only serve to help the user recover their energy, generally from things like running and rolling, completely passive acts. The last binding of Filianore to vegetation, growth, life even, is the simplest and possibly the strongest. Filianore is all that stands between the green, living Ringed City and the barren, ashen wastes. Waking her up sends the world to its apocalyptic wasteland. She is single-handedly sustaining all the life in the Ringed City. She is why the Ringed City is so green and filled with life when the rest of the Dark Souls world is barren. And without her, everything crumbles. Well, everything except for us and Gale, and one stupefyingly persistent Ring Knight wandering the wastes. Now we can see the return to the Chloranthy ring fully. This statue of Gwyn handing the pygmies the strongest form of the Chloranthy ring is symbolizing not only giving the pygmies the Ringed City, but also giving them Filianore herself. And the fact that both of these are represented by the same ring in the same statue also furthers the connection between them. It is also important to note that Gwyn's handing the strongest Chloranthy ring. Anything lesser wouldn't connect with the power and importance of Gwyn's beloved daughter Filianore. Finally, we come all the way full circle back to Gwyn himself. He's the one the statue is of, and he has obvious deep connections to the past two layers. What's important about him specifically, other than being the giver of both the Ringed City and Filianore, is that Gwyn is known as the Lord of Sunlight. The source of Gwyn's power, his Lord Soul, is affiliated with light, energy, lightning, and sunlight. The connection between this fact and the ring lies in etymology, which is something that has always been another way that FromSoft has given subtle story hints. The word Chloranthy shares the same base as the word chlorophyll, which, if you don't recall from biology class, is the name of the pigments that make plant life green. Not to get too technical, but chlorophyll is a vital part of photosynthesis, the process by which plants turn sunlight into the energy they need to survive. Now, I know this sounds like a bit of a stretch, but roll with me on this one. I assure you that etymology is a big part of FromSoftware's storytelling. Gwyn handing the pygmy a Chloranthy ring is reminding the pygmy, or at least implying, that Gwyn, being the Lord of Sunlight, is the source of life and energy for the whole world, including the pygmies. Gwyn is letting the pygmies know that they are completely dependent on him, just as the plants are vitally dependent on sunlight. This case only can be made because of Gwyn's essential role in killing the ancient dragons and bringing about the current age of fire, in which all live and to some extent thrive. Gwyn is often linked metaphorically to the sun, after all he is the Lord of Sunlight. So while I know this seems a bit far out and speculative, I really think it holds up. What seemed like such a pointless item for such a grand set piece is actually a powerful example of symbolism and metaphor, all told without telling. By making this so implicit, From makes this one room and statue so much more than it originally seems to be. At first we see Gwyn crowning a pygmy, one power recognizing another. After our investigation we see the original picture, but we also see the Ringed City, Filianore, and Gwyn all being represented in their own different yet connected ways by this one little ring. This statue is able to bring three complicated, meaningful, and interwoven stories out of a simple ring by capitalizing on details and subtleties. This showcases how Dark Souls has always done a fantastic job of telling stories through little details. Dark Souls 3 doesn't hold hands. The franchise is almost based on that principle, and so story and lore are no exceptions. This lets us dive into the story however much we want to. And if we really want to, it lets us learn so much about the history and meaning of what's around us, and it does this in insightful, implicit ways that make us think and really reward thorough investigation. So that's how Dark Souls 3 tells a story. Thanks so much for watching, and I have to say that a lot of the lore and story in this video was inspired by the Redditor Gench, who made a short comment about this topic that I thought was so insightful that it had to be made into a video. It was further fleshed out in a lot of ways from a lot more discussion had on Reddit, so a huge thanks to all of you over there. It's honestly an amazing community to learn about lore. Now, if only I could figure out what the heck the lore importance of the Ring Knight wandering the Ashen Wastes is. Honestly, I have no idea. He's just like such a random thing there. I do want to say that I'm very aware there are limitations and there are maybe even inconsistencies and negatives to the style of storytelling from Software has, and that a lot of it is probably speculation by the player. They might not intend quite all of it. Don't worry, I'm not dissing other types of storytelling. I'm just trying to show the nuanced positives that can be found in this style of storytelling, since most games don't do it. Let me know if you have any ideas about any of the lore I talked about, or the Ring Knight, or anything else in the comments below. So I've done the main lore points I've wanted for this DLC, and I'm not sure what's next. I might be making a channel update video as well, since Dark Souls is kind of closing out. This is the last piece of content, and I've really only been doing Dark Souls content for the past year. I need to figure out what I'm gonna do next with my channel. I'm kind of thinking Destiny 2. If you guys have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. Anyways, thanks again. A special thanks to Gench and the Reddit Dark Souls community, and I hope to see you in my next video. Peace out.